Some games are fun for a few hours, and then you completely forget about them a week later. But these are the games that pull you in so hard, once you start playing, it becomes almost impossible to stop. Here are the 19 addictive games that are absolutely worth every penny. Evil West is one of those underrated games a lot of people missed, but once you try it, it's easy to see why it deserves more attention. It mixes Wild West vibes with supernatural horror in a way that feels fresh, and it focuses on giving you solid, satisfying combat from start to finish. You step into the role of a vampire hunter working for a secret organization, taking on missions filled with monsters, mutants, and brutal enemies. The story keeps things simple, but it gives you just enough reason to keep pushing forward. Where the game really gets addictive is the combat. It's fast, aggressive, and very hands-on. You're not just standing back and shooting, you're constantly moving, dodging, chaining attacks, and mixing melee with ranged weapons. The gauntlet you wear becomes a big part of that, letting you pull enemies in, launch them, or just hit harder, which makes every fight feels like you're right in the middle of an action movie.
Father, I couldn't leave you at the mercy of these savages. Could you not do that, you fleshy toad? You nearly hit him. Institutes, choking on ash and blood. I had hoped you'd make it more difficult.
The ritual will begin soon.
Come on, let's get out of here. Mayu, stop! Mayu!
Everyone died.
Are you leaving me again?
We can't escape after all.
No matter what happens, I'll forgive you, Mia.
Together until the very end.
Fatal Frame 2 Crimson Butterfly Remake pulls you in right away with a strong sense of curiosity. You find yourself in a forgotten village called Minakami, a place that never seems to see daylight, where twin sisters Mio and Mayu become trapped, and things slowly start to feel off in a quiet, unsettling way. The story revolves around a ritual involving twins and a tragedy that never truly ended, and that mystery is what keeps you moving forward, just trying to understand what really happened. Gameplay still centers around the camera obscura. Instead of using weapons, you deal with ghosts by taking photos of them. The closer they get, the stronger your shot becomes, so every encounter turns into a small risk. You either wait for a better moment or play it safe and lose damage. This remake rebuilds the original game with updated visuals, lighting, and sound, making the environment feel more real and more uncomfortable. Cyberpunk didn't start off smooth, but the version you can play now feels like a completely different game. Night City is packed with detail, from crowded streets to random events happening around you, making it easy to just wander and get lost in it. You play as V, a merc trying to survive and build a name in a city where everything comes with a cost. The story pulls you in with strong characters and choices that actually affect how things play out, so you're not just following missions, you're shaping your own path. Gameplay gives you a lot of freedom. You can go full combat, use stealth, or rely on hacking to control enemies in the environment. Updates over time have improved systems, added new features like vehicles and auto-drive, and made everything feel smoother overall. What makes it addictive is how everything connects. You finish one mission, then another opportunity pops up. Then another story grabs your attention. Before you know it, You've been playing for hours just exploring, upgrading your build, and seeing what else the city has to offer. Resident Evil Requiem brings Leon S. Kennedy back, but this time, he feels more tired and a lot less confident than before. The story leans into a darker tone, showing what years of dealing with outbreaks have done to him, while pulling him into another situation that feels personal instead of just another mission. Alongside Leon, there's a new character named Grace Ashcroft, and her perspective shifts the mood in a different direction. Where Leon feels controlled and battle-ready, Grace comes across more vulnerable, which adds a different kind of tension when the focus switches to her. The gameplay leans back into grounded survival horror. Resources are limited, environments feel tighter, and encounters are meant to make you think before acting. What makes it interesting is how it blends something familiar with something new. Leon brings that connection to the past, while Grace introduces a different angle, making the experience feel less predictable.
The team has settled on a person of interest. A former T-virus researcher.
Because my master made you who you are. Raccoon City was where it all began for me.
Ghost of Yotei is the next step after Ghost of Tsushima, and it immediately stands out because of its new setting and direction. Instead of following Jin again, the story shifts to a different region and a new conflict, centered around Mount Yotei in northern Japan, where survival feels harsher and more isolated. Combat keeps that clean, precise style, but with new tools and variations that fit the colder, more unforgiving setting. You still rely on timing, positioning, and reading your opponent, but the environment now plays a bigger role in how fights unfold. What makes it addictive is how immersive everything feels. You're not just completing missions, you're moving through a world that reacts to you, learning its patterns, and slowly mastering its systems. It's the kind of game where you finish one objective and immediately want to keep going just to see what's over the next hill.
That binds everything, living or dead. Running from what haunts you gives it power.
The Occultist starts with a simple setup that quickly turns into something much darker. You arrive on a remote island called Godstone, a place abandoned for decades after a cult left behind a trail of rituals and disappearances. You're there to find your missing father, but the deeper you go, the more it feels like the island hasn't really been empty at all. You play as Alan Rebels, a paranormal investigator, and instead of weapons, you rely on tools tied to the occult. The most important one is a pendulum that lets you detect hidden clues, interact with the environment, and uncover fragments of the past. Gameplay leans heavily into exploration, puzzles, and stealth. You move through abandoned buildings, foggy streets, and strange locations while avoiding supernatural threats rather than confronting them directly. Some moments push you into chase sequences or tense situations where timing matters more than anything else. Lies of P is one of those Souls-like games that gets really addictive, especially because of how good the combat feels. Every fight demands focus, timing, and patience, and once it clicks, you start wanting to push further just to see how much better you can get. You play as P, a puppet navigating a dark, collapsing city inspired by the Pinocchio story. The world is filled with hostile puppets, strange enemies, and characters with their own motives, which keeps the story interesting as you move forward. Combat is where the game really stands out. It's built around precise timing, blocking, perfect guarding, dodging, and knowing when to attack. You can also customize weapons by combining different parts, which adds variety and lets you experiment with different styles. What makes it hard to stop playing is the progression. You overcome a tough boss, upgrade your build, and immediately feel stronger. But the next challenge is always waiting.
Dare seize it. This key to a new paradigm, a new world. This moment to silence the fools forever. This is Ergo.
The Last of Us Part 1 is one of those games that pulls you in with its story, but what keeps you playing is how real everything feels. From the first few minutes, you're not just watching events happen, you're part of it. You follow Joel and Ellie as they travel across a broken version of the United States, dealing with infected threats and desperate survivors. The story is simple on the surface, but the way it builds relationships and emotional moments makes it hard to step away. Gameplay mixes stealth, shooting, and survival. You're always low on resources, so every decision matters, whether you sneak past enemies, use a bottle to distract them, or go all in and risk wasting ammo.
Once upon a time, I had somebody that I cared about. And in this world, that's good for one thing. Get you killed.
Take care of myself.
How many close calls have we had?
I get in trouble down there. You make every shot count.
I got this.
Hope you know how to use that thing.
I've had some practice.
Horizon Zero Dawn is the kind of game that hooks you through curiosity. You start in a world where robotic creatures roam the land, and the big question is simple. How did things end up like this? You play as Aloy, an outcast trying to figure out her past while slowly uncovering the truth behind the world around her. The story builds piece by piece, and the more you learn, the harder it is to stop, because you want to see how everything connects. Gameplay mixes exploration, crafting, and tactical combat. Taking down machines isn't just about shooting. You study their weak points, set traps, and use different tools to control the fight. Each encounter feels like solving a small problem, rather than just clearing enemies. What makes it addictive is the loop between exploration and discovery. You head out to complete a quest, find something unexpected, learn more about the world, and then keep going.
You can see the corruption coming off them in smoke.
You've come a long way since the Citadel, Aloy.
Who are you?
An interested party.
Braves, to Aloy's side, now! So it comes to this.
Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2 is the kind of game that hooks you with pure intensity. You play as Titus, a genetically enhanced Space Marine, fighting in massive battles where hundreds of enemies can rush you at once, especially against Tyranid swarms. The setting is full-on war from start to finish. You're part of the Imperium, moving across different planets and war zones, dealing with alien threats and chaos forces. The scale feels big, but it never slows down. It keeps pushing you forward into the next fight. Combat is where it really gets addictive. It's not just shooting, you're constantly switching between guns and heavy melee attacks. You can parry, dodge, and execute enemies, and those executions actually restore your armor, which keeps the momentum going. That flow, fight, break through enemies, recover, then jump into the next wave, keeps everything moving without downtime. What makes it hard to stop playing is the non-stop pressure. Enemies keep coming, fights keep escalating, and you always feel like you're right on the edge but still in control.
For as long as I can remember, I have looked for an equal. One who could push me. One who could surprise me. One who could even beat me. Yet all I found is disappointment. Will one of you finally give me what I desire?
Marvel's Spider-Man 2 feels like a big step up the moment you start moving through the city. Swinging across New York is faster, smoother, and just more fun, especially with how both Peter and Miles bring their own style into the game. This time, the story focuses on both Spider-Men dealing with bigger threats and more personal struggles. You switch between Peter Parker and Miles Morales, and each of them has their own abilities and moments that keep things from feeling the same all the way through. Combat builds on what worked before, but adds more variety. Peter gets the symbiote abilities, which change how aggressive and powerful he feels, while Miles still brings his bioelectric powers into fights. The mix of gadgets, combos, and movement keeps encounters active instead of repetitive. What really makes it addictive is how everything flows together. You finish a mission, start swinging, spot something happening nearby, and suddenly you're off doing something else without even planning it. Cronos: The New Dawn builds its hook around a strange mix of time travel and survival horror. You're moving between a ruined future and the past, trying to understand what caused a massive collapse while dealing with things that used to be human but clearly aren't anymore. You play as a traveler sent into dangerous zones to search for time rifts and extract key individuals from the past. The world feels harsh and industrial, inspired by Eastern European environments mixed with retro-futuristic tech, which gives everything a very distinct look. Combat is where things get tense. Resources are limited, enemies are aggressive, and there's a unique mechanic where defeated enemies can merge with others if you don't burn them quickly. That means every fight can get worse if you don't manage it properly, forcing you to think ahead instead of just reacting. What keeps you playing is the constant pressure to adapt. Between managing supplies, dealing with evolving enemies, and uncovering what really happened across different timelines, the game keeps changing how you approach each situation, so it rarely feels predictable.
Where others see darkness, they see stories to be told, worlds waiting to be found. They expand our horizons. They reach farther. They go first, while others sleep. They dream.
No Man's Sky has one of the biggest turnarounds in gaming, and the current version feels packed with things to do. The universe is procedurally generated, which means every planet you land on can look and feel completely different, from toxic wastelands to peaceful worlds filled with strange creatures. You start with almost nothing and slowly build your way up. Along the way, you upgrade your ship, gather resources, and expand your equipment while traveling across systems. There's also a light story that guides you, but most of the time, you're free to go wherever you want. Gameplay is all about exploration and progression. You can scan wildlife, mine materials, build bases, trade with other factions, or just keep flying to new planets. Over time, updates have added things like multiplayer, settlements, freighters, and more systems that make the universe feel more alive. The reason it's easy to keep playing comes from the loop itself. You land somewhere new, discover something interesting, improve your gear, and then move on to the next system.
My name is Simon. Do you know anything about this place?
Oh, you knew. Look, I'm obviously hurt. Blacked out pretty bad. Can't remember how I got here.
What do you remember then?
I was in the pilot seat, dealing with some heat shields, and that's my last clear memory.
What the hell? How is this possible? Are you human?
SOMA starts off simple, but it quickly turns into something much deeper than expected. You wake up in an underwater facility called Pathos 2, and almost everything around you feels wrong. Machines acting like people, voices coming from nowhere, and no clear idea of what actually happened. Gameplay focuses on exploration, puzzles, and avoiding threats rather than fighting. There are moments where you have to hide, distract enemies, or just move carefully through dangerous areas. It's not about action. It's about staying calm and figuring out a way forward when things don't make sense. You play as Simon, trying to piece things together while moving through broken stations deep under the ocean. The story slowly reveals what's going on, but instead of giving clear answers right away, it keeps raising bigger questions about identity, consciousness, and what it really means to be human. Sifu is one of those games that gets seriously addictive once you start understanding how it works. At first it feels tough, but the more you learn enemy patterns and timing, the more satisfying every fight becomes. You play as a martial artist on a path of revenge, going through different locations to track down the people responsible for your master's death. The story is simple, but it gives you a clear reason to keep pushing forward. Combat is all about precision and timing. You're dodging, parrying, and chaining combos while managing your structure bar. The unique aging system also changes how you play. Every time you die, you come back older, stronger, but with less health, which adds pressure to improve instead of relying on retries. What keeps pulling you back in is the mastery. You go from barely surviving fights to clearing entire rooms smoothly, and that progression feels earned. The Outer Worlds 2 feels like a bigger, more confident version of the first game, especially in how it handles freedom and choice. This time, the story takes place in a new colony called Arcadia, where you're investigating dangerous rifts while dealing with different factions fighting for control. Instead of locking you into one playstyle, the game lets you shape everything. Dialogue choices can completely change how situations play out, whether you talk your way through problems, pick sides, or just create chaos. Those decisions don't just affect the story, they change how characters react to you and how the world responds. Combat feels more fluid this time around. You can switch between guns, melee, abilities, and even stealth, depending on how you want to approach each situation. The weapon variety is also more creative, with some tools built more for fun and experimentation than just raw damage.
And like all good sequels, we've included everything that should have been in the first game. More action. More weapons. And more graphics.
there would be no victor. And so, we inhabit a fractured world, awaiting the arrival of the Elden Lord. Unless, of course...
Elden Ring is one of those games where you don't even realize how much time you've spent until hours have already passed. The world is huge, but it never feels empty. There's always something pulling your attention, whether it's a strange structure in the distance or a hidden path you didn't expect. You explore the lands between at your own pace, with very little hand-holding. Instead of following a strict path, you decide where to go, what to fight, and when to come back stronger. That freedom makes every discovery feel more personal. Combat is challenging but fair. You're learning enemy patterns, managing stamina, and figuring out when to attack or back off. There's also a lot of build variety, so you can go heavy melee, magic, or mix both depending on your style. The reason it's so addictive comes from that constant sense of discovery and progress. You overcome a tough fight, find new gear, then suddenly spot something else worth checking out. Baldur's Gate 3 is the kind of game where every choice actually matters, and that's what keeps you locked in. From the moment it starts, you're making decisions that can completely change how the story plays out, and there's rarely a single correct way to handle anything. You're dealing with a mind flayer parasite in your head while traveling with companions who all have their own goals and personalities. Conversations feel just as important as combat, and sometimes talking your way out of a situation is more powerful than fighting. Combat uses a turn-based system inspired by Dungeons & Dragons, but it's very flexible. You can combine abilities, use the environment, set traps, or come up with creative solutions that the game actually allows. It rewards experimentation instead of forcing one approach.
The parasites are merely a symptom of a greater sickness in Faerun. The infected hear the voice of the Absolute and believe it to be a god.
The Absolute is more dangerous than you can possibly conceive. It threatens all who live. It threatens the gods, the weave, the very fabric of the universe itself.
How would you feel about helping me kill some evil bastards?
Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of those games that gets really addictive without even trying. You might start with a simple mission, then get distracted by something on the road, then end up doing something completely different for the next hour. You follow Arthur Morgan, an outlaw trying to survive as the Wild West is slowly coming to an end. The story is strong, but what really stands out is how natural everything feels, from conversations in camp to random encounters while riding across the map. Gameplay moves at a slower pace, but that's part of what makes it work. Hunting, looting, managing your gear, and even taking care of your horse all add to the experience. Gunfights feel grounded, and every action has weight to it. What makes it hard to stop playing is how alive the world feels. There's always something happening around you, and even small moments can turn into full stories. You don't just play missions, you get pulled into the world, and that's what keeps you coming back.